I don't know about you guys, but where I live, the TCG section of stores like Walmart or Target are very limited, usually only containing the big three: Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you're especially like me and don't really have any dedicated card shops nearby, your knowledge of what exists out there is probably going to be limited to whatever your social media algorithms happen to feed you, if anything at all. The beginning of the pandemic brought in a massive boom to the TCG industry, and with it, a lot of people looking for packs to open and games to play. Although its timing couldn't have been better, the Digimon TCG released in 2020 but seemingly flew under the radar for a majority of people, which is quite a shame as it's quickly become my favorite out of all the TCGs to date and is both easy to pick up and rather cost efficient to get into. Like the Dragon Ball Super card game and the One Piece TCG, the Digimon TCG is also managed by Bandai, and I think they really hit it out of the park with gameplay that's intuitive, enjoyable, and most importantly, hardly ever feels one-sided. Whether you have familiarity with the Digimon franchise or not, please allow me to introduce to you the Digimon trading card game. Before we get things started, if at any point you enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing so you can stay notified of future uploads while also helping to support the channel. The game itself is easy enough to set up. Your deck has to be exactly 50 cards, and you have the option of having a DigiEgg deck, which can be anywhere between 0 and 5 cards. Both players shuffle and cut each other's decks, including the DigiEgg deck, and determine who's going first. Use whatever method you prefer: rock, paper, scissors, rolling a die, flipping a coin, really just whatever. But Digimon has it so that whoever wins is the person going first. Once that's determined, both players draw 5 cards for their starting hand, and then put the next 5 cards from their deck face down as their security stack. A player wins by either directly attacking the opponent while they have no cards in their security, or if their opponent is unable to draw a card at the start of their turn. Simple enough, right? Now, if you come from another TCG, you're probably familiar with the concept of resources. Resources are basically what dictates the pace of gameplay for any game, since you can't make more moves than your resources allow. In Magic, this is your mana. In Pokemon, it's energy. In Yu-Gi-Oh, it's being able to play a card. You get the point. Digimon's resource is called memory, and it's tracked with a gauge that runs from 10 for player A to 10 for player B, with 0 being the center and also our starting point. Every card you play costs memory, and once the memory gauge goes past 0 and into your opponent's side, your turn ends. So if I have 2 memory, and I play a card that costs 3, playing it will cause my turn to end and my opponent will begin their turn with 1 memory. If the memory gauge is at 0, it is still that player's turn. And if for any reason you pass your turn without giving your opponent any memory, they will automatically start their turn with 3 memory. So you're probably wondering, well, what do the cards look like? Well, we have 4 types of cards: Digimon, DigiEggs, Tamers, and Options. All of these cards can be one or more colors: red, blue, green, yellow, purple, black, or white. Let's look at how a turn progresses, since the types of cards will matter here. The very beginning of the turn is the Unsuspend phase, which will be familiar to Magic players. This is where cards that are suspended, or turned sideways, are turned back to the upright position. Skip this step during your first turn. Next is the Draw phase, where you draw a card from your deck for your turn. If you're the first player and it's your first turn, you won't draw a card. Next is the Breeding phase, or the Raising phase to some players. This is where you can do one of 2 things. Either hatch a DigiEgg by placing the top card of your DigiEgg deck face up next to the deck, or move a Digimon that is level 3 or higher from the DigiEgg zone to the battle area. You cannot do both in the same phase, though through some card effects you could do both in the same turn. DigiEggs are level 2 Digimon, and they can only exist in the DigiEgg zone, although there are a couple of very rare exceptions. But if it says level 2, it has to stay there. DigiEggs have an inherited effect at the bottom, which is an effect it gives to any Digimon card that is on top of it. You can place Digimon on top of DigiEggs either through Digivolving or through card effects. If for any reason a level 2 DigiEgg would be in the battle area, it is sent to the trash, which is your discard pile, instead. Note that Digivolving in the breeding area does not activate any on-play or when Digivolving effects, and Digimon in the breeding area are generally immune from being targeted by effects. Now we are in the main phase, which is where we can play cards and attack. We can do both as often as we like for as long as we are able to, until we run out of memory. Now for Digimon, these have a level between 3 and 7, and have a Digimon Power Score, or DP, listed in the top right. This is the strength of the Digimon. Each Digimon has a play cost in the top left, which is how much memory it costs to just play the card directly from your hand onto the field. They also have a Digivolution cost, which is how much memory it costs to digivolve them by placing them on top of the appropriate card. All Digivolution requirements are listed on the card, usually being a level below it and being at least one of the colors listed. So for example, this Agumon can digivolve from either a yellow or red level 2 DigiEgg, or as listed below right here, a Koromon. If a Digimon has a specific requirement like this, that Digimon can be of any color as long as the name matches. When digivolving, place the card you're digivolving onto the top of the card you're digivolving from, but make sure you can still see the name and inherited effect of the cards underneath, and then draw a card from your deck. This is not optional, but you won't lose the game if you can't draw a card this way. After drawing a card for digivolving, if it has any on-digivolving effects, those activate. If a Digimon has any effects at all, they'll be listed here, and there's very little guesswork you have to do. It's all explained on the card. Like DigiEggs, Digimon can also have an inherited effect that they give to anything on top of it, but not all of them do. A Digimon can have multiple inherited effects. Right here it lists a Digimon's rank: Rookie, Champion, Ultimate, or Mega, its attribute, Data, Virus, Vaccine, Free, or Variable, and any Digitypes it might have. These will matter for certain card effects, but for the most part aren't too important. Digimon that you play from your hand onto the field directly cannot attack the turn they are played. If you digivolve a Digimon, it can attack if the card you digivolved onto was also able to attack this turn. However, a Digimon with the ability Rush is able to attack the turn it is played. To attack with a Digimon, suspend it by turning it sideways. When you declare an attack, you must choose either your opponent's security stack or one of their suspended Digimon. You can't attack an unsuspended Digimon unless a card effect says that you can. When two Digimon battle, compare their DP, and the highest one is the winner, and the loser is deleted and sent to the trash. If there's a tie, both get deleted. When you attack security, your opponent flips over the top card of their security stack. If it's a Digimon, have them battle. Even if the opponent's security Digimon wins that battle, it is sent to the trash. If it's an option or a Tamer card, it most likely has an effect that activates if it's revealed in a security check. In that case, follow the effect if it has one, and if not, send it to the trash. Some effects can lower the DP of a Digimon. If a Digimon's DP would be reduced to 0, it is sent to the trash. When a Digimon on the field is sent to the trash, all the cards under it also go to the trash. Tamer cards are cards that typically have good supportive effects, such as boosting your Digimon's DP, doing something when your Digimon attacks, or giving you more memory. Tamers stay on the field until deleted by an effect. Options require a bit more work to use, as you must have either a Digimon or Tamer of the same color or colors on the field. So if an option card has two colors, you must have any combination of Digimon or Tamers on the field who can match the colors on the option card. So if I have a Digimon or a Tamer that has the same two colors, that one card counts for both. The color requirement does not matter if the option has a security effect that is being activated. Options typically go to the trash once their effect resolves, but some will have an effect that says delay, which keeps them on the field for at least one more turn. Options can be very powerful and can very easily turn the tide of a game. There's a lot more I could cover, but I'll save that for part 2 where I go more in depth on certain effects, timings, and interactions. So to recap, both players have a deck of exactly 50 Digimon, option, and or Tamer cards, and an optional DigiEgg deck of 0 to 5 DigiEgg cards. You can have up to 4 copies of a card with the same card number in your deck. After determining who goes first, both players shuffle and cut their opponent's deck and their DigiEgg deck if one is present, then draw 5 cards. At this point, a player may choose to mulligan if they don't like their starting hand, by shuffling their hand back into the deck, having it cut once again by the opponent, and drawing a new hand of 5 cards. you can only mulligan once. After both players have drawn their hand, they set the top 5 cards of their deck face down as their security stack. The player going first does not draw a card from their deck at the start of their first turn, and has the option of hatching a card from their DigiEgg if they wish. The player then plays cards until the memory shifts over to the opponent, and this will continue back and forth until the game is over. A player wins by attacking their opponent while the opponent has 0 cards in their security stack, or if the opponent cannot draw a card at the start of their turn. Knowing the basics is only the first step. There's so many different cards and different interactions and combos, it can be hard to know where to start. Of the 5 most recent tournaments for the current format, there were 26 different archetypes represented in the top 16 between all of them. That's an insane amount of decks making top cut, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the number of different archetypes you could build around. I'm going to break down a few of the more popular ones so you can kind of get an idea of how top performing decks are built as well as understanding what they do. Out of the 70 decks that made the top cut, 10 of them were MirageGaogamon, so this is our most popular pick. MirageGaogamon decks try to manipulate hand size for both players and have effects based on the hand size, usually if that's 8 or more cards. There's a few different ways you can build this deck, but the one I'm seeing the most of has 2 main lines of play. The first is using the main Gaomon line to return cards to our opponent's hand, and through our inherited effects, gaining memory in the process. The second one uses the Gomamon line to trash our opponent's Digivolution cards, preventing their Digimon from becoming too powerful, but also supplementing a few of our stronger effects down the road. Our Tamer, Thomas H. Norstein, helps push our strategy along, and we have a couple of options that support both of these themes in addition to standard search and memory booster cards. Overall, this is a deck that is cohesive, consistent, and very simple to pick up. I'd recommend this deck for players that enjoy disrupting their opponent. At the time of recording, this particular list costs $71.36 USD and took 3rd place. Next up is Yellow Vaccine, which focuses on yellow cards with the vaccine attribute. Now there are plenty of ways to build this deck since there's a ton of yellow vaccine cards, but the list I'm sharing is just the one that placed the highest. But I highly encourage you to experiment with a ton of different lists because this deck can be extremely versatile. The main combo of this deck focuses on 3 different cards. BT14 TK Takaishi, who lets us put a yellow vaccine card from our hand into our security. BT14 Patamon, who at the start of our main phase can let us look through our security and digivolve into a yellow vaccine from there for free, and if it does, we can put a yellow vaccine into our security from our hand. And finally, Emissary of Hope, which has the same effect as Patamon and ridiculously enough only costs 1 memory. You can very easily have a level 5 Digimon on board as early as your 2nd turn with minimal investment, and can end your turn on a Mega. This absurd race to a level 5 or 6 can put you miles ahead of your opponent and in a powerful position to take the game. Most yellow decks are supplemented with cards that either keep your security stack replenished, or weaken the opponent's Digimon by either reducing their DP or giving them a negative security attack modifier so their attacks don't harm your security. But really, there's no wrong way to build this deck. As another example, here's my own list that I personally enjoy, although some of the cards are not out yet. But depending on the list you want, this deck can have a drastically different price point. But the core of the list that we have is going to be around $45 USD, and almost all of that is the Patamon, which is a little pricey at the moment due to how phenomenally good it is. For reference, this 2nd place list runs $161.51 USD, but you can definitely get that lower if you want. Red Hybrid is our next deck, having 2 1st place finishes out of the 5 most recent tournaments. Hybrid decks usually focus on digivolving onto Tamers and having effects that activate if you have either a Hybrid or a Tamer in their Digivolution cards. Red Hybrid in particular wants us to focus on building up to their boss, MirageGaogamon, and through all of your effects, being able to both delete powerful opposing Digimon and also wiping out the opponent's security stack in one blow, leaving you with just 1 direct hit left to win. So the entire deck pretty much just tries to streamline that process, digging through your deck to try to get to the necessary pieces and getting them all on the board as quickly as possible. A very straightforward deck that I'd recommend to players who don't care about whatever the opponent is trying to do and want an easy to repeat game plan. The current price for this deck that keeps on winning is $52.12 USD, or $44.70 if you wanted to drop the 2 Ukomon for 2 red memory boost and use that $8 for sleeves, but that's just a thought. Fourth on our list is ShineGreymon, and this deck says no to your opponent having any Digimon on the field, because it's constantly reducing their DP, usually to 0, which then deletes them. The other main focal point is the ability for them to turn their Tamer, Marcus Daemon, into an attacker, and then activating a million effects when Marcus attacks. The gameplay is very straightforward and very difficult to deal with, although you can mitigate it through trashing their Digivolution cards and or de-Digivolving them, removing Marcus through non-deletion effects because he will come back, or having your own on-deletion effects that don't specify how the Digimon needs to be deleted, because some do and that makes a difference. And just a fun note, if you want to tweak the deck to your liking, you can run the BT14 Patamon, since almost all of your level 4 and higher Digimon are yellow vaccines. One thing to note is the BT13 GeoGreymon is just ran at 1 copy. This is because it's one of the few cards to find itself on the restricted list, meaning you can only run 1 copy of it. I'd recommend this deck for players that enjoy watching the hope drain from their opponent's eyes. This first place deck list costs around $86.45 USD. Coming up next is D-Brigade, which focuses on swarming the field with Commandramons and just swinging into your opponent with reckless abandon, with most of your effects focused on playing out your low-cost Digimon from the deck. D-Brigade is usually supplemented with a number of D-Digivolution effects to slow your opponent down long enough for your rookies to rush to victory. There's not much to really be said about D-Brigade, as the deck keeps its plans simple with little room for error. Your biggest enemy is more likely to be how your deck got cut more than anything, as you'll struggle a bit if your effects don't find your pieces to keep playing. I'd recommend this list for players that enjoy building large armies worth of creatures. This 5th place list is $74.64, or $59.85 USD if you want to substitute the defense trainings with black memory boosts. Finally, we end our little sample list with Royal Knights, which have a vastly different playstyle compared to the majority of decks. Royal Knights focus on their DigiEgg, King Drassel, and your effects typically want to place cards under him as Digivolution cards, which in turn allows you to play your Royal Knights for less and less, resulting in playing powerful Mega Digimon from your hand for very cheap. This strategy requires you to really think about when you play specific cards, as most of your Digimon have situational effects, so you'll need to make sure that you can play them at the right moment to get the most value out of them. Other than that, you're pretty much just trying to win through your powerful attackers and powerful effects. While you will start the game by giving your opponent a seemingly large amount of memory for the first couple of turns, for the most part that shouldn't be a problem, since by the time they're actually able to really start taking advantage of that, they've already paved the way for your now cost-effective Royal Knights to probably end up negating a lot of their hard work. If you enjoy the slow build-up to a powerful crescendo of monsters, then this is the deck for you. This 3rd place list currently sits at $170.37 USD, which is definitely an anomaly amongst top Digimon decks as far as I'm aware, but that's due to a number of the 4-ofs being expensive due to them being secret rares. And again, this is but a small sample of the number of different decks available to you. As of this video being posted, EX05 Animal Coliseum releases, bringing with it a number of new strategies to the table, and BT15 Exceed Apocalypse releases in a month, introducing and upgrading even more decks. So with all that in mind, how do we go about building a deck of our own? The first place you should start with is your game plan and your playstyle. What kind of game do you like to play? How do you like to play? Are you more of an aggressive, hit-hard kind of player? Do you want to swarm your field with low-level monsters or quickly build up to a giant one? Do you want effects that disrupt your opponent, effects that delete their own cards? Is there maybe a card you saw that you really like and you want to build around it? Well, what does the card do? Try to fill your deck with cards that do similar effects and or cards that search for cards similar to that card. A great resource to use is DigimonCard.io, with a constantly updating card database that makes it easy to filter and search for what you're looking for. Let's say you really like the effect Reboot, because it lets you unsuspend at the beginning of your opponent's turn, which prevents them from attacking your Digimon. By just searching Reboot, it'll show you every card that mentions that phrase. They also have a bunch of deck lists posted from tons of events and a lot of user-submitted ones as well, so you can find a deck that features any card you like and just go for it. The way I like to build a deck is to pick a Mega Digimon and go from there, since the big boss is generally what you're building towards in the majority of strategies. Remember, you can include up to 4 copies of most cards. You might have noticed in the list that I showcased that decks follow a similar pattern for the sake of consistency. It's not a hard rule and not one that every deck follows, but you'll notice the vast majority stick pretty close to it. That's the 12-10-8-6 rule, or 12 rookies, 10 champions, 8 ultimates, and 6 megas. Magic players will be familiar with the term mana curve, and other TCGs might know it as the level curve. The curve is essentially how many cards of each respective cost are in your deck. Ideally, you want more low-cost cards compared to high-cost cards so that you can almost always play something on your turn. In Digimon, you typically want more low-level Digimon since their play costs are low and you can keep your hand relatively uncluttered. Having a handful of megas won't do you any good if you can't play them. Sticking close to this ratio of Digimon leaves you with 14 cards for Tamers and options, and you'll probably go somewhere around 50-50 on those depending on the kind of deck you're building. Again, there aren't any golden rules or anything to follow, but they're just natural patterns in deck building that arise from aiming for good consistency. And that just about does it for this video. In part 2, I'm going to cover keywords, special Digivolutions, special play requirements, and just generally more in-depth aspects of the game. If you're interested in seeing actual gameplay because you're more of a visual learner, I'll be uploading plenty of that as well. Don't forget to like the video if you found any part of it helpful, and subscribe if you want to stay notified for upcoming videos. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.